What should elementary schools do to improve critical thinking? Um, my name's Elliot. I know I speak for the group when I say that we really enjoyed working on this, and we've really enjoyed discussing it and really analyzing the problem to come up with a solution that we think is best. So first of all, let's talk about the problem a little. I know we're talking about elementary school here, so it might look a little confusing that we mentioned college graduates right off the bat. It's important to know that this is way more than just kids needing cognitive skills. Those cognitive skills go much further than that. They continue throughout life and affect everything that happens to those individuals, the decisions they make, even the careers they're in. And this is where this information comes from. It's a bunch of employers were surveyed and said, what are the college graduates you hire lacking? And it came down to those soft skills, communication, being able to clearly present their ideas, being able to think creatively to solve difficult problems, and the ability to work well with others. One of the things that we point out is that technology is really hurting children's cognition right now. The ease of information and access. We actually have a quote on that by Williams. Collaboration, critical thinking, and problem solving are really the primary skills kids are going to need in the workplace of the future. There's just too much content now. The ability to access info at your fingertips has made it so content is overwhelming. No one can really be an expert. And think about that for yourself. I know if I come across a problem and I don't know any information on it, I immediately jump onto Google on my phone, in my pocket, at my fingertips, literally. What does this mean? There's actually, for those who are too lazy to Google something, there's a website where someone else can create. Let me Google that for you. It's something pretty interesting that the internet has done. So why are we having this problem? Like we mentioned earlier, technology, that also makes entertainment more easily accessed. Kids are playing games on their phones, on their parents' phones, on their tablets, on their parents' tablets, on their video game consoles, the PS4 coming out, the Xbox One, all those sorts of things. Another big issue is the push teachers have to teach to tests. Common Core is something that's coming out right now and is really being developed. And we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but basically what it is to take education as a whole and bring it down so everything is standardized across the U.S. Many of you are probably familiar with No Child Left Behind. Tragically, it failed us. And it seemed like a really good idea, and it seemed like it was going to work, but it just didn't. And again, those technological advances, they've really had an impact on the abilities cognitively of individuals. So little pun on Common Core. I hear you, your stormtrooper from Star Wars. They said Common Core would make me career ready. Now I'm just one of the clones. And it comes back to what we were discussing a little bit earlier. The fact that we get out into the corporate world and these kids who don't have these cognitive skills have now grown up and they lack those important skills. So there's no more one of a kind. There's no more individuality, which does have a lot to do with cognitive skills. All right, so what? What do we propose should be learned? First of all, critical reading. The ability to evaluate something for its content, arrive at conclusions based on the evidence that the contents propose, as well as considering ethical ideas and values. I think it's important to note here that we need evidence for our conclusions. This is not just something that we arrive at. It's not something we're told to believe. It's that we make our own decisions based on what we read. Critical writing. We'll talk more about this later as well. First order or free form writing. Stream of consciousness, or second order or structured writing. Both have something to do with cognition, and both are crucial in the development of cognition. We'll also talk about art and the impact that has, as well as field trips. Something surprising, at least for me, was that field trips had an impact on cognition. So how do we teach these things? Well, first of all, it's important to be done early on in life. These skills can be taught multiple ways, not just the 4 that we're going to talk about, but the creativity that the teacher possesses also lends to the creativity that the students can learn, learning in the ways that best suits them. Teachers need to be unrestricted and trained properly when it comes to teaching these skills. And restrictions make it harder to teach each student. And we feel that students must be taught to their needs rather than a generalized need. So first of all, skills need to be learned early on in life. I don't know about you if you know a lot of kids in elementary school or not, but kids in elementary school are surprisingly able to come up with complex ideas or thoughts that are of their own. And there's a few reasons for this, as stated below, and I think the one that impacts them the most is that they're open to the world of wonder and they believe that anything is possible. Not having preconceived notions also really plays into that. And that's what's so wonderful about school, is that it's an opportunity to explore life in a safe way, that it goes beyond just experiencing things, but there's someone there that can tell you this might be a better way to go about it. This might be a better way to learn that. And you can. So writing, the first order thinking. It's the free form writing, the stream of consciousness, like I mentioned earlier. What's so neat about this is it helps build intuition. Intuition is the ability to connect thoughts and creativity. And so I don't know if you journal or not. I do. And when I journal, it's much more like this first order thinking. It's the stream of consciousness. Let me think about my day. What has gone on? What has affected me? What hasn't affected me? Things like that. The second order thinking is that structured writing, or the thought out process. This is when you sit down, especially in elementary school, they first teach you about your 5-paragraph essay. You have your introduction, your first body of evidence, your second body of evidence, your third body of evidence, and your conclusion. This helps students discover why they think the way they do, why they feel the way they do about certain things. It boosts logic as well as control over thinking, and that's an important skill to have, to know whether or not your thoughts are meaningful, whether or not your thoughts are based on fact, and whether or not they bring something to the table. Reading. I love reading. I've always loved reading, and being able to interact with a book and really dig in and feel like I'm a part of the story. And what's wonderful about reading, and I think the most effective point that it does, is teach students to have open-ended discussions about what they're reading, whether it's for entertainment value or otherwise. Being able to discuss that openly really helps build that collaboration that those companies, that those corporate officers are looking for, that we don't really get anywhere else. It also has the ability to teach children moral issues and to be able to evaluate, was that a right decision or was that a poor decision? And that's something that we need, especially as adults. Okay, so field trips. This one's pretty cool. An opportunity to learn and explore is given to students who go on field trips. They have the ability to look at the world around them. It also prompts discussions in the classroom as well as outside of the classroom, and it can spark interest and curiosity in a topic. It was actually a field trip, well, not in elementary school, this was in high school, that has put me on the career path I'm on right now. I want to be a hydrogeologist, and we got to explore a dam and sit down with a hydrogeologist and talk to him about the things he did, and that's actually what I want to be now. If it wasn't for that field trip, I would have never discovered this field. There's no other way. I mean, have you heard of a hydrogeologist? I certainly hadn't. It's amazing what field trips can do for students, and it reminds me of a TV show. Another funny little picture we got here. Magic School Bus. Hopefully you're familiar with it. If you're not, it's on Amazon. Go watch it. It's amazing. The teacher takes the students on these wonderful field trips inside of a kid's body in one episode, to the Amazon rainforest, all these different places where they get to learn about the world around them in an interactive environment, which lends so much more to their education, to their cognitive abilities. They have the ability to analyze the world around them in ways that I didn't as a kid. All right, so art. We're going to dive into this definitely, and I want to just kind of hit the basics really quick that, music, it can teach the fractions, whole notes, quarter notes, half notes, etc. And painting really helps students and children to express themselves in healthy ways and teaches them analytical skills. There's a general perception that the arts are frill. There's a great deal of academic rigor involved in the arts, though. This was by Paulette Black. And it's very true. Well, the arts seem to be frilly, that you don't need them. They're very important. And I have a really good quote on that later from a teacher herself. So using the arts to promote critical thinking. This is a 15-minute video, which I would love to show you and go into more depth. You can Google that top line, using the arts to promote critical thinking. It's the first result. It's amazing. Watch the whole thing if you get time. I implore you. I'm going to show you a few clips from it in a minute. So our solution, like I mentioned before, is that we want the teachers to be unrestricted and trained, that they can really do their jobs. It's important that that gets across, that the teachers need to be unrestricted. There's no more tests to teach you, no more things like that, and that the teachers can be trained properly on how to bring about cognitive development in children. All right, so here's those 3 videos, the 3 short clips. First of all is an art teacher teaching her students to think orderly, to think of the steps. This is the second form of thinking that we discussed earlier.
This whole page finished. I'm teaching it so that they learn how to explore new materials, how to make decisions, how to solve problems, how to set up a problem of their own, kind of, as they're working out the different layers or stages of their pieces, how to think things through from beginning to end, how to kind of start to visualize and say, well, I want this, and what does that mean? Does it look like? So that means I might have to do these things first, or this thing second, or that, but then I have to come back, and also learning that it's not linear. So to understand how you're moving around, because art is beyond not linear. It's you're always coming back, and that's also that reflection process.
All right, and this second clip is from a different art teacher, and it talks about how she feels she's making the difference in their lives, not only now as students, but in the future when they're adults.
By the time they reach middle school, where they're so self-conscious and so inhibited about so many other factors of their life, or high school, where they start to say, I can't draw, I can't create, I can't do this. That whole I can't mentality sets in. This is the time to capture them. This is the time to really reinforce that you have an imagination. That's it. That's the key element. How can we get our kids to imagine? If we could do that, I think the sky's the limit in what they could accomplish and how they can take that and use it in all walks of life and in all stages of their life. And if I could have a little part to play in that, I'm very blessed to be able to do it.
All right, and this last clip talks a little bit more about Common Core, and it's that teacher from the first video we watched and her feelings on it and how she thinks art has a much more developed role in it than it gets credit for.
I think it's essential. I think, it's funny when I go to these different professional developments and we discuss, like, the Common Core standards for math or for English, and they're coming up with these supposedly now, or they're rewriting them in these new ways, and it's like, art's been doing this since it started, but yet we're supposedly not even on the train when we're kind of like leading the train, I feel like.
I really like that art's leading the train in some ways, that it teaches skills that the students won't learn otherwise. And that video, that 15-minute one, I really recommend you go back and you look at that. It's amazing. All right, so unrestricted teachers, we talked about this before. We don't want teachers to teach children to a test. We don't want them to be taught like machines. Every student is different. Every student has different methods that they learn from and different capabilities, from mentally handicapped to extremely gifted. That there's a huge spectrum there, and we don't want students to be rushed through material rather than giving them the focus to learn. All right, so I want you to take a minute here, pause this video, and look over this list and think about it for yourself. The cost of programs and training and resources that the teachers would need to be able to accurately affect the children's learning abilities, as well as the benefits that we've talked about from higher cognition. Think about that for 5-10 seconds. If you think about the costs in programs alone, it's going to be tons of dollars. I mean, thousands, close to millions of dollars just to get the programs in place. Common Core is expected to cost just as much. However, instead of focusing on the curriculum, we're focusing on the students in this instance. We're training the teachers not with get the numbers, get the 100% on each test, get the 90s, get our kids knowing stuff, rather than get our kids learning stuff. Get our kids to learn and to enjoy learning and to have the ability to learn, not just now, but later on in life. And the resources that those teachers would need, more access to pieces of technology that can be used for good. Tablets. There are teachers that do use tablets in some classrooms, and it has an amazing effect on those students to be able to participate with technology like that. However, it's very costly. And the benefits. Having increased social awareness, the ability to look at the world and understand problems and where they come from, and understand where people come from and how to address certain situations. The ability to make decisions is huge. How many decisions have you made that are wrong? Did you think about them long enough? Ultimately, the biggest benefit is a well-rounded individual who is better equipped to handle life. I mean, the more complex life gets, as I've gotten older, I know I've needed to use those skills that I learned personally this past year and a half. You see, I had 3 concussions, so my cognition really dropped, and I had to relearn how to think. I had to go through 9 months of cognitive therapy, sitting down and learning these types of things that students could be taught, but as an adult, and it was much harder as an adult. I feel like I did have these skills before because I was fortunate enough to have teachers that were really good. I was fortunate enough to have parents that were involved in my life as well and helped me to become a well-rounded individual. Cognition plays a huge role in life, not just as a child, but as an adult. It affects your workplace, your relationships, everything. And so the question is, for our children, do the costs outweigh the benefits? It's something for you to decide. This is the solution we're proposing to this epidemic, if you will. If tons of corporations are saying, we need people who can collaborate, who can communicate, who can think deeply about problems and creatively. We need people with cognition, with soft skills. And we don't have them. Is it worth it?